this is Ari Wickus. I'm joined by the one and only Oren Glickman. This is the Yeshiva League Pass podcast tip-off show. This is episode number 5, and we have a great show for you in store with our guest of the week, our player of the week, Bobby Sigoura from Ramaz. Before we get into that and bring him onto the show, obviously, I want to talk about everyone who makes this possible. Our two main sponsors for the season is Holy Schnitzel and Gotta Get a Bagel. Holy Schnitzel, we've talked about it before. If you're hungry, if you're thinking of being hungry, they're the place to be. Get a great meal on Uber Eats, on a lot of different social media platforms where you can order food. They are a great spot. There's a location in the 5 towns throughout all boroughs. Holy Schnitzel is a place to celebrate victories and to get over a tough defeat. At the same token, we have Gotta Get a Bagel. They are located in Woodmere, New York. They are an all appetizing bagel store. They have salads, sushi, appetizing, you name it, they have it. Bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, brisses. They do it all, catering. They're a great place. Gotta Get a Bagel, an unbelievable place. Start your day with Gotta Get a Bagel, finish it with Holy Schnitzel, and then that's a complete day. So without further ado, we are going to bring on our guest of the week, player of the week, Bobby Sigoura. Hello, Bobby. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. We know you had a great week, a good ending to the week. I know you had a lot of games in a short amount of time, and we're going to talk about you and your season and everything, and just really get into it. Where a lot of teams right now are in Yeshiva League winter break. I know you at Ramaz already had your break, so you have finals coming up. So we appreciate you taking some time to join us for the show. So I'm going to ask you a question. Oren's going to ask you a question. We're going to fire away. We know you're cool under pressure, so it's something that we know you'll be great at. So the first question I have, and obviously I'm very in tune with the Ramaz program and yourself as well, having seen you since you were a freshman. But one thing I want to talk about, and really to start this episode with, is you just went into SAR this past Thursday night. It was their Sting night. It was an atmosphere that was pretty intense. Talk to me about how you guys coming into that game, someone who is, every game you need a victory to stay in that playoff hunt. And I know we'll talk about your aspirations that you had at the beginning of the season, where you are now, but talk about the atmosphere at SAR and how you guys were able to come out with that victory in such a great home crowd.
Yeah, I think that crowd was probably the biggest I've ever played in, even bigger than in Globerman. I think going into the game after losing 2 straight, MTA and Hillel, we really knew, we knew what we had to do. We knew we needed to get a win. And we didn't really think, maybe other people thought of us as underdogs, but going into the game, our mentality is we're not underdogs. We expect to win, we expect to play well. And we did it. We hit some clutch shots. Sugar was hitting some crazy shots. Jojo Tusi, Stanley Carey. It was really a team effort. The defense was amazing. And it was huge for us to come out with that win, because I think it's really good for our playoff hopes.
Do you think, is it somewhat, as a player, is it better to go into a crowd like that and play on the road or play at home? Where do you feel like the pressure's on them? What that atmosphere, how does it get you going when you see the fans in the stands like that?
Yeah, for me, I mean, when you ask be the hero or the villain, I think the villain is definitely, I would rather be the villain. But again, even when you are going into an environment like that, where it's loud, there's a million people, you can't move anywhere. It's nerve-wracking. It's a little scary, especially when you're at the line for 2 shots, in the clutch. But listen, I mean, I've done it before. Games like the LA, the Globerman finals last year. I think I've learned how to deal with it better. And as a team, we dealt with it very well that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Oren, what do you have for Bobby?
Yeah, so Ari touched up on the state of the team right now compared to what the expectations might have been going into the season. And I know you guys were hit pretty hard by the news with Isaac. I feel like any team could just bury their heads in the sand after getting news like that, but you guys just plow ahead, which I've been very impressed with. And I think you proved, despite Isaac's injury, you guys can still go toe-to-toe at the top of the top. You took TABC to overtime. You just knocked off Ramaz on their Sting night. What's the mentality? How do you guys just keep going ahead despite all the setbacks that you've had so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, at first it was definitely really hard. Figuring out, understanding that we're not going to have Isaac. Isaac was such a huge part of our team, even last year, huge part of our team, and we based a lot of our game plans and our expectations on having him in the game. But with that said, at one point we said not having Isaac can't be an excuse anymore. We don't have Isaac. We learned to accept it, even though it was such a huge hit. And we just learned we have to work harder because without him, we have to work harder on defense. We have to work harder on the glass. So at one point, when we just put our heads down and realized that Isaac wasn't coming back, unfortunately, and this is our new identity, I think that's when we really figure out how to go and seeing that we could go like you said toe to toe with the top teams in the league. It's obviously a confidence booster, and I think sometimes we need that to show ourselves that we're capable. And I think SAR proved to ourselves that we are capable of beating some top teams in the league.
Well, to piggyback on that, Bobby. So you obviously, like you said, Isaac, a top player in the league, and he goes down very early in the season, kind of a shock. Then you hear the news he's out for the year with the torn ACL. How do you, as an individual player, who obviously you weren't the main focus of other teams' game plans, you were a part of the focus, but now other teams know Sugar, Sigoura, the SNS boys kind of, you have to lock in. And how do you maintain your defensive intensity? Because we know you're a great defensive player and still have that energy and all the wherewithal to play the offensive side as well.
Yeah, so when Isaac did get hurt, it was a realization that my role is going to be a little different. Me and Sugar, everyone on the team, even alone, who stepped up big time. But I understood that my role is going to change, and I actually wasn't sure what my role would be, whether it was going to be a four or still a guard shooting threes. But I think that just made drove me to work harder because knowing that my role was up in the air, really, it just motivated me to work harder, run on the treadmill, just get my stamina up so that I can be called to do anything, whether it's face guard the best guy on the other team, or it's to have an offensive focused game. So I think it was just really a motivation um, to work harder and to be able to step in any situation.
Got it. Oren, what do you got?
Is this a type of conversation that you had with Coach Ferguson? Did Coach Ferguson maybe pull you to the side and tell you, Bobby, listen, Milan Kushner graduated last year. Isaac's now out for the year. We need you and Nate to become more of the guys this year.
Yeah, that was definitely a conversation we had together. Me, Coach Scott, and Nate. He was pretty much. I mean, Nate even before. Nate was always a scorer, primary scorer on the team. I guess I wasn't as much thinking back to our run in 10th grade with the same squad. So it was really Nate and Isaac getting most of the points. And he really basically told me that we're not going to win games if Sugar's the only guy scoring. So I mean I took that and obviously it made me work harder, but it was definitely a conversation that we had. And he said that our team will only go as far as not only our seniors, but me, Sugar, Burkoff, the captains of the team. So that was definitely mentioned and emphasized because again, it was our identity. Like we didn't have Isaac. We had to
Well,
accept.
right. And how do you go through? Obviously, you've had a really, most of your games are close games, nail biters. You're up by a lot, not up by a lot. You're up by a little. You're down by a little. It's always been pretty competitive against all the really good teams. And you guys went through a stretch where you kind of kept coming up short. You had leads, you lost the leads, and I guess that's also factored. You don't have Isaac, right? So those games that are so close. How were you able to maintain your composure and your inner strength to really realize that you guys can do it, and you just got to do it once to prove to yourselves and everyone else that you can take care of business?
I think a lot of it was, as you said, it was happening so many times. We had significant leads, not always significant, but we had some solid leads and we were giving up those leads. And it was happening so many times that it was just we're coming. We went into the half versus SAR, I think up 10, it was 30-20. And we just kept telling ourselves, like, this has happened way too many times. This is where it ends. Like we're pushing through no matter what happens. They're gonna throw a punch, we're going to punch back. So I think at a point, it becomes that it was so repetitive and it happened so many times that we just couldn't stand it anymore. And we said we told ourselves that we were able to do this and we knew we could do this. We didn't think we were underdogs. And again, I also think it was definitely the crowd feeding off the energy of the crowd. At least for me, it was a big factor, especially on defense. At times in the end of the game when I felt like I was really tired, I didn't sit at all that game, I don't think. So I was getting really tired in the end, and just like the crowd being there, being in that environment, it was pushing me just to push through for the last 5 or so minutes of the game. So I think the crowd is a big factor also.
Sure. Oren, go ahead.
We're obviously going to discuss the rematch more at length for our game of the week. But now SAR come to the Ram Dome. I believe it's Saturday night. I don't know the start time because the website still won't update. But obviously SAR will be thinking revenge. So what are you guys anticipating in terms of that rematch come Saturday night?
I think so. We did talk a little in practice today about what was going right for us and what didn't go as well for us in the game. But I think a big thing was hitting really tough shots. And shots aren't always going to fall. The shots that we were hitting, some of them were really tough shots, and we have to expect at least go into the game with the expectations that those shots won't go in. So if that's the case, then we have to win the game in other aspects on the defensive end, on the offensive glass, and we have to get to the foul line. So I think we can't really bank on hitting the shots that we did that game, and we're gonna have to win in some other ways. And also they might be hitting their shots. So I think it's really just it's a matter of like doing other things, doing all the other things right. Coach Scott says that we have to be doing 2 out of 3 things right to win a game, either shoot well, score, defend, rebound. So I think if we're defending well and rebounding well, we could win this game even if we're not hitting our shots.
I have 2 more questions. I'll start with the first one. So as far as beating SAR now, and I know you're someone who always thinks highly of yourself, your teammates, your program. Do you firmly believe you can win a championship this year still even with the loss of Isaac, knowing the teams out there? Do you feel confident that it won't be easy, but it's something that is still the goal of the team and yourself?
Yes, I think for sure, especially going toe to toe, as you said, with top teams in the league. It's definitely a confidence booster, but I think the confidence was there regardless. We know our capabilities. We know everyone has stepped up on this team, and I think we know what we can do. Um, I think we for sure we can compete with these top teams, and I don't think. I don't think I think the confidence was always there. That's what I think. For sure, the confidence, we always knew that we could make a big run and possibly win a championship. But definitely this past couple of weeks solidified that in our heads after a long stretch of not doing as well in the Globerman tournament and the Magan tournament. So I think this last couple of weeks did wonders for us.
Right. You could actually potentially play SAR 4 times this year.
It's
I
very
just realized,
tough.
yeah, you've already played it twice, and you have a third time coming up, and then potentially in the playoffs. Or go ahead with one more question, and then I'll jump in with my last one.
Yeah, I'm still of the belief that you guys are a team that a top seed does not want to draw in the playoffs. And I actually looked at the standings right now. If the season ended today, I think you guys would go to Hillel, and that would mean a cousin matchup with the other Bobby Sigoura. Yeah, you thought we weren't going to ask it, but yeah. What was that experience like a couple of weeks ago going up against your cousin? What was the vibe like in terms of your grandparents? Would love to hear the background on that.
I mean, it's always great when we play Hillel. And actually, fun fact, I've never played Hillel at home ever. It's only the 2 hour drive to deal. But I think the lead up to the game was great. My grandma was texting us on a chat, send me the game time, send me all details and everything. I'm coming. And really, he killed us that game. He was getting offensive rebounds left and right,
There's
putbacks.
money at the line too. I don't think he
He
missed
was
a free
also
throw.
money at the line in the clutch in the beginning of the game. He was really great for them, and he destroyed us. But it's always great going against. I actually got a nice picture going up for a jumper on him. It was like a nice cousin moment. But then we do like the picture after. It's fun. We have a good time, and then I stay in deal after, and I hang out.
Wow. There you go. If you
Yeah,
can't beat them, join them. There you go. That makes sense.
exactly.
So that actually, and shout out to your grandparents, who are the only ones who guaranteed a victory coming into that game. They knew that
Exactly.
they
They're
would get
rooting for the
one.
offense.
Right.
Whoever's on offense,
Right.
There you go. Smart players. Smart
Yeah.
Triple doubles for
grandparents.
both grandchildren.
like the Kelsey matchup,
Right.
the Travis and
Exactly.
Kelsey.
So here's my last question. I started this last week when I asked Josh Shabbat. You're going down to the West Coast. You're going to take on the West Coast All Stars. You have to put a team together of just Yeshiva Leaguers currently on varsity this year. You're playing either on the 2, the 3, or the 4 spot. You got 4 other starters to bring with you. Who's your squad? And it's got to be a rounded squad. It can't be like 5 big guys. It's got to be a team that it's cohesive, that can work together. So
Only
let's
Western
hear.
Conference?
Oh, no. I'm saying you're going to play like in LA against like the
Okay.
Eulas,
So the whole
those
league.
kids. Yes. So it's your whole league here, Yeshiva League. Who's your squad?
Can I say the Ramaz starting 5?
No. Well, you can say it, and we'll give
You
it
could
a
use
clap.
some Ramaz teammates.
Right.
So
Well,
besides Ramaz, I'll stay away from Ramaz for now.
there you go.
I have to think. So for sure, your very own Eyal Kindler from TABC for sure. He's a beast. Trying to think of a net. Oh, my good friend Ricky Haddad, top point guard in the league for sure.
Bobby's
need a
worried about
4.
making friends now. He's like, I have
we
2
need a
spots left.
4. Trying to think who would be a nice 4. I think Josh Abbott could be our 4. What do we got? Me,
You have
Ricky.
You, Ayal, and Ricky.
Yeah. By the way, before you say the last one, I was going to say it could be an all Syrian starting 5, but I didn't want to do that because I didn't tell Josh he could do that.
Be.
So yeah, you already Ayal's honorary Syrian member, but you got one more spot.
I think he came to deal once also.
Yes, he does go every so often.
Exactly. So
You're teeing him up now for Eli Braha, Ari.
Oh,
all right.
You reminded me. I think Eli Braha's got to be the 5th for sure.
So there we go.
We lineup and AL.
There we go. It's a pretty good squad. We got
Ayal will go through his official conversion process in a couple of days.
Right.
We'll help him out.
Exactly. Well, look, that's a great team, and you know we don't want to leave anyone out, but it's a fun little exercise we do here. But before we let you go, any shout outs? I know you mentioned a bunch of your teammates, but anyone you want to say shout out before we let you go at the end of the show here?
I think you knew asking me who I was going to shout out. It's got to be my dad. Got to be my dad. After every game, even during games, after every game, I could show you my messages with him. I have videos, and a paragraph on each video telling me what I could have done better, what I did good, what I didn't do well. So definitely shout out to him because everything I know comes from him. Every basketball thing I have going for me is all from him, the motivation, the shot form, everything. Because me and my brother have the same shot.
You do. That's true.
So your younger brother, gets incoming from your father and poppers.
Yeah, exactly.
How does he have time to study with all that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I've seen that chat. It's paragraphs and paragraphs. It's great though. He loves it.
All right. Well, that's great. Listen, a shout out. He's known as dad to you, Victor Sigoura. He's the best. And not only is he a great dad, he's got the best hair in the business. That's bar none. But no, exactly. So Bobby, congrats on the season, on the career you've had. It's really been, again, personally amazing to see from start to, we're not finished yet, but we know you're going to continue to grow as a player on and off the court. Best of luck. And we thank you for being our player of the week, and we'll see you down the road.
All right.
Best of luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Wow. And there it is. Bobby Sigoura, our player of the week. And it's funny, Oren, I said when I said the thing, I'm like, give me your all Syrian starting 5. And then, but then I really didn't do it because I didn't give Josh that easy out. So I figured, it's like, let's see what he has to say. But, it just does go to show you what there's so many, we could ask 10 different guys and they could have a squad of all different players, and they're all going to be great players, all around players. And, that's why they're players of the week. And that's why they're, always knowing the talent around the league. So let's get into our rankings. We have, we're going to get to the rankings of the Yeshiva League. We're going to go down 20 to 10 as we normally do. And we're going to start with YMA, Magid Abraham, 20, and they're going to be there all season. 19, we have Or Yisrael, who still only one win on the season. I think they have one or two matches left on the year.
Yeah, they play Hillel. I think it's actually the second time they're going down to Deal, because originally they were supposed to host them and they had to move the game. So the rule is if you have to move the game, it has to be by the other team. I think it's very unfortunate looking at their standing after the amazing run that they had last year. And Ezra Stern and Yermi Gross are still phenomenal ball players. It just didn't click for them this year.
Yeah, it's just as surprising as it was last year. It's almost as surprising this year the other way, for how short they're coming up in games and how successful they were last year. At 18, we have JEC. Been here all year, one of the bottom tier of the rankings. Good JV coming up. Perhaps next year they'll get a better run in the varsity level. At 17, you have the Kushner Cobras. I believe their season is over, and we've alluded to the fact before. A really learning year this year for them, as they had some sophomores on the varsity level, which will bode well for them in the future. At 16, we have Waterbury, who finished the season really strong. Unfortunately, they forgot about the first 3 quarters of the season when they it's almost a shame they didn't pick up 1 or 2 wins before. They'd be a playoff team. But I think they ended up 5-9, and that's just not going to get it done.
I think they finished their season strong in a sense because they had some sort of Waterbury Invitational that they ended up winning. So, if you're not having a successful season, create your own tournament.
Right.
You can end on that note.
Exactly. Well, there you go. That's the blueprint to have a successful season, no matter what your Yeshiva League record is. And then at 15, we have Hafter. A bunch of these teams we're going to mention now haven't really played because of Yeshiva Week, or if they did, we'll talk about their most recent games. Hafter hasn't played since we spoke about them last. So they're last week. They're at 15. Hank is at 14. Again, hasn't played since the Sachin tournament. Rambam at 13, and then YDE at 12. These teams, YDE, Rambam, and Hafter, are going to be competing for the 6th playoff spot and the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. I think Rambam plays both Hafter and YDE. I think they need to get at least one. If they get one, probably clinches it for them based on tiebreakers. If they go 0-2 and YDE upsets someone, it could be a 3-way tie depending on outcomes of some of those games. YDE had a chance, as we get to number 11, is Heschel. Heschel beat YDE earlier in this past week, and then Heschel had a really good game against SAR, which I believe you had seen the game more than I did. They were leading throughout the game, and then I think SAR came back at the end. What have you seen from Heschel this season, and especially this past week?
They're extremely well coached, and they're always going to be that team that we don't know much about going into every season. And I think the fact that they don't have a real identity in the league, a lot of people don't know about them. They're going to use that to their advantage. So I think SAR we're coming off one game against JEC, so maybe they could use their winter break as being a little bit slow out of the gates. But credit to Heschel for making it a game, and if not for the heroics for Ari Halpert, they probably would have come out on top. And I think I've spoken to several people for months. No, not months. The last several weeks. Heschel play Frisch. The last game of the season at Heschel. That game will determine who gets the 6th seed out of the West, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I was going to say that's a big matchup coming up. That's why Heschel getting the win against YDE was huge, because now they have I believe they have 2 games left against Frisch and against MTA. Right. So big games. I mean, the best they could finish is 7-7. So those are going to, I agree. And at number 10, we have the Frisch Cougars, who haven't played. They beat Or Yisrael. They did pick up a victory. They're 6-6 right now, and they have 2 tough games left. They have TABC, which is going to be a tough game. I think it's at Frisch, that game, right? So that's always a rivalry game, even though on paper we know TABC is the better team, but rivalry games kind of tend to write their own script and their outcomes. And then they have that big game against Heschel. So if Frisch does not get a victory and end 6-8 and Heschel ends 6-8, Heschel would win, because based on the tiebreaker of the head-to-head against Frisch. So big games coming up. And also one thing about Frisch is you've seen really the progress of Isaac Stepner. Beginning of the year, everyone knew who he was, but every game now you look at the box score, you see on Yeshiva League Pass recaps, leading scorer, rebounder. He's really solidifying himself as one of the best players in the league.
I think to myself, if he didn't move up, how would this first team be in more disarray?
Yeah, they probably would have been a non-playoff team, I would say. I mean, if they're at best going to be 8-6 with Isaac, I would say, probably a non-playoff team, which is almost unfathomable for a school like Frisch to not make the playoffs. But you know what? Isaac is up there, and they're looking to clinch the playoff spot. And then again, like you mentioned before with Bobby, one of those teams once they're in the playoffs, you kind of you get nervous playing them. They're not like the typical 6 seed or 5 seed. They're a team that can go in and beat anyone, as we know. And then at number 9, you have Flatbush Falcons kind of laying in the weed. They haven't really beat many great teams, but we just know how solid they are. They did beat Ramaz in a cross conference game. They have a big game at the end of the year against Mag and David, which will probably determine some playoff seeding in that conference between them, Mag. They're right around there. But Flatbush is number 9, and then at number 8, you have the North Shore Lions. What do you think about North Shore? Again, not a team we've spoken about a lot, but definitely playing well.
I think they've definitely pounced on their schedule. I think it was also an added plus that they got Magan earlier in the season rather than later in the season. So credit to Coach Cullum for being a master tactician and how he assembled the schedule. And it's theirs for the taking. I think if we had said before the season that North Shore would finish in that top 2 with DRS, I think nobody would have thought that. So credit to them.
Yeah, especially with losing all that firepower, all the seniors that they lost from last year's team. I mean, yeah, credit to them. And then at number 7, we have Mag and David, who you just saw firsthand. And I was wrong in this game of the week. I picked Magan to beat TABC, and TABC came in there and from the score. And I know there was a point that TABC was up by a lot, and then Magan made a run, maybe go up by 1 or tie it up at halftime. But what did you see from Magan? Again, not the typical Magan of last year, as we talked about, but what have you seen from Magan David and their season?
Yeah, I thought Phil Scher had a great night that night, but it just wasn't enough. You can't have Phil and Josh do their parts and not get contributions from anyone else on the team. You need someone like an Abed to do his part. And as amazing as Josh Abbott is, I think one of, if not the best player in the league, he's forced into taking some difficult, not so ideal shots. His shot selection has to be a little bit more less conservative because he doesn't have that Sardar Smecky alongside him.
Right. And I think that's what he talked about. Like when we had him on as our player of the week, like he's starting to trust his teammates. And I think the Satchman tournament really helped him with that, where they had a lot of games in a short amount of time. They did very well, and they lost they were the runner up against DRS. But I think that's something where he's still waiting to see if he can find that, third scorer besides him and Phil. So Phil's not really a major scorer; he's more a facilitator. So that's why they're at number 7. At number 6, we have the Ramaz Rams with our player of the week, Bobby Sigoura. We talked about their season-defining game against SAR, where they were able to win on Sting Night. Interestingly enough, that game, they led the entire game from wire to wire. And it was a really, really big game. They had a lot of games in a short stretch. They had the back-to-back MTA and Hillel Saturday, Sunday, where they lost both in very close games. And then beating SAR was a huge game. And now they end their season. They play SAR again and JEC. So they're 6-6. If for some reason they can get to 8-6 or 7-7, I think they're in a very good spot to make the playoffs now. I think one more victory pretty much guarantees it. But you've seen Ramaz. You've said it on a bunch of times. No one wants to see them in the playoffs. But what do you think that victory against SAR did, besides for TABC and all MTA who are trying to get that 1 seed? What has it done to really set them up?
I think it totally changed the narrative about them. The fact that they were in all these nail biters with TABC, MTA. I think they were leading Hillel at halftime.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Even MTA.
Yeah. They had this reputation of not being able to close out games, and they finally did it. And they did it in a game where they probably faced the most adversarial crowd they faced all season. So I think that's an added plus to what they were able to accomplish in this SAR win. So I think this will really jumpstart them in the second half of the season now. Granted, though, we're going to talk more about it in the game of the week. But, buckle up. I as a top seed team in the Yeshiva League, I do not want to face Ramaz right now.
Yeah, I think that's where Ramad's at number 6. At number 5 is Hillel, who I think they're really good, and I know that they can score with anyone. I think the issue for them is going to be defensively. They're not gonna be able to score 70, 80 points every game. They're gonna have to play a little better defense. And I know with the Hillel style, it's a lot of up and down. Eli Braha is phenomenal. I mean, an unbelievable player. He had 30 points against Ramaz. It seems like he starts a game with 20 plus points every game. But like you mentioned, Bobby Sigoura, Bruce Epstein, other kids are really stepping up. And what do you think? Do you think would you be shocked if Hillel's a one and done in the playoffs, or can you see them potentially in the Final Four?
I feel the thing with Hillel is a lot of people say that their one problem is they lack the big statement win. You know, even in
Right.
Slatterin, they couldn't get it done against DRS after having a 17-point lead.
And
So,
they've had an easier schedule throughout
right,
the
they're
season.
taking care of business against all these bottom dweller teams, but they're still missing that big key win to show that they belong among the elite. And on top of all that, they dropped a game against Heschel.
Right, and they do have a game against SAR coming up, so that will be they already played MTA. They lost to TABC. So I guess the game against SAR is an opportunity to really make a statement. And at number 4, we have the SAR Sting. SAR again, that loss to Ramaz doesn't really affect them making the playoffs. We know that they're in the playoffs, but it has a big it could hurt them later because they still have a tough schedule. Right now, they're 9-2. They have 3 games left. They have SAR, MTA, and Hillel. So 3 really. I'm sorry. Ramaz, what did I say? Ramaz, Hillel, and MTA. So they have 3 tough games, and it's according to reports, Ari Halpert is going to be on the injured reserve for a little while. He fractured his wrist, so they're going to have to play without him. First of all, Refuah Shalem and Ari, who's also a past player of the week, and he was a phenomenal in that game against Ramaz. Him and Weiss really, single-handedly kept them in the game and almost were able to get the outcome their way. But they're in that stage now where if for some reason they end up 9-5, they'll be fine playoff wise, but they're going to end up being a 4 or 5 seed as opposed to 3 days ago looking at a number 1 seed. So what do you think with SAR without Halpert for at least a game or 2 or 3? How do you see this changing the SAR outlook?
Well, they got to see if they can draw the Ramaz inspiration in terms of Ramaz plowing ahead without Isaac to see if SAR can now do the same without Ari. I think a big burden is going to lay on the shoulders now of Ellis. That's my prediction as someone who really needs to step it up now in Ari Halpert's absence. And it's not great timing in terms of this injury occurrence, but the show must go on, and nobody will be more prepared than Rafi Halpert when it comes to a scenario like this.
Yeah, and I also agree. I think Ellis everyone knows he's a certified bucket, really, really talented offensive player. And now without Halpert, he'll have the ball in his hands more often. So I look for him to step up, and other teams start game planning for him a little more so than they have in the past. Not because he's not a great ball player, just because there's only one ball and so many guys in that team. And then at number 3, MTA. I haven't seen them firsthand. The game they played against Ramaz, I was watching on the live stream, but they look really good. MTA is legit from what I've seen. Again, I haven't seen them in front of me in live games yet, but from when I was watching them, they look like they have great size. They have this Heschel transfer, Jakey.
Pecha.
All right. There we go. You know I am with names, schools, not great, but Jakey, what's his name? The
Abenaim.
Yeah, that kid is a bucket too. I mean, he's a great mid-range game. Anytime against Ramaz, when Ramaz was making a run, he came back and scored. I think MTA is the real deal, and we'll find out now. They have a game against SAR, and then who's their other team that they play? Heschel, right?
Yeah,
right.
Already at the Max Stern Athletic Center.
Right. So if they end the season with 1 loss and TABC ends with 1 loss, TABC would be the 1 seed based on their head-to-head victory. But MTA is a 2 seed. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't think a credit to Ushi doing a great job and really to the kids on the team, because normally we've talked about you see the JV the year before, you say, oh wait, this JV, they have a great sophomore class, rising juniors, and then you see wow. But this team, I don't think, like you said,
in JV.
Right. So they were and I know the transfer, Jakey's a really good ball player, but this is a real good effort by a lot of kids in the team. It's really great to see. That's what you want. The team out of nowhere, and now like we talked about, they're going to be in tier one in Sarachek, deservedly so, and they're really cooking on all cylinders. And let's see how they finish out the season and beyond that. At number 2, you have TABC, who you obviously know very well. Took care of business. They went into Mag and David, handled them a double-digit loss at Mag and David on a Saturday night. They haven't lost since the SAR game, I believe, much earlier in the year. What do you see from TABC? What's the feeling like, down in Bergen County about how they want to finish the year? And obviously we know that it's a championship season for them. That's where they're hoping to get to.
Yeah, well, I think they feel now that SAR dropped the game to Ramon, that the 1 seed is theirs for the taking. Because even if they were to lose to Frisch now, they'll still feel like they're in the driver's seat, assuming that MTA drops one of their last 2 against Heschel or SAR. The Magan game, it was a game of runs. They were actually down by 1 at halftime. But I think it was the first real game where you saw a very balanced scoring attack between Sachs, Kinderler, Borgen, Mandel, each reaching double figures. And, I think they're already thinking about the playoffs right now, even though there's still 2 games left to play. They're actually there was a chatter about SAR not wanting SAR to finish as the 3 and preferring that they finish as the 2 because they will play the winner of potentially MTA North Shore in the semifinals. So
they're looking ahead.
They're looking ahead already. Yeah.
By the way, it's funny. I was going to say it. I didn't, not that in depth, but I was going to say finishing as the 1 in the Western Conference is a big deal. Because then you don't have to play DRS till the finals,
right.
And if everything works out the way it should. And I think we can all agree that the Eastern Conference after DRS, it's a drop or probably a tier or 2.
The Western Conference lower seeds are more of a fear than the
correct. So I think that's like, if North Shore's finishing as a 2, I think most of the teams on the Western side look at them and be like, they're good, but we can handle them. But I think they look at DRS with all the firepower they have as a team you really want to avoid until you're playing in the championship. And then you're not avoiding anyone. But that leads us right into our number 1 team of the rankings, DRS Wildcats. DRS, again, I don't think they played since we had our last episode, but they are, they're a great team. And really, besides Joe Aaron, it's Tzvi Saidi who's really stepped up and has become, I would say him and Joe are probably averaging close to same points, about the same average a game. I mean, he scores a lot of points, and he makes them really formidable. And they're a good squad. You've seen them. I think they're clearly the 1 seed right now, 1 on our rankings. But a couple teams like TABC right there nipping at their heels to see if they could overtake them. Anything specific on DRS that you want to
it certainly appeared that way in the Saturn final, that Saidi gets his fair share of points alongside Aaron. I think it's highly likely that they'll defeat Flatbush in the regular season finale to finish the season at 13-1. And that 1 loss was, a difference of, the ball not getting off in time at the buzzer, so they could have been looking for perfection if not for that. And I think they're going to be paying attention to who that top Eastern Conference they'll potentially welcome to the greenhouse for that semifinal round.
Right. I would say, and this is just based on just the notoriety of the school and the players, I think they would love if MTA finished as the 1 seed. I think DRS would actually, no, they probably want MTA to finish as the 2 seed, not the 1 seed.
Right.
So they would play them in the semifinal. I mean, and again, no knock in MTA. I think just everyone knowing the players on SAR, TABC, Hillel, those other schools, you probably, MTA is kind of like just, going along, taking care of business. But, we'll see how that all plays out. So those are our power rankings of the week. From 20-1, DRS maintains their grip on number 1 spot. And we'll see. We have a lot of games coming up right after winter break. It's every team has about 2 to 3 games left. But at the end of the year, every game is huge because you're jockeying for playoff position, for seedings, to get in the playoffs, go home. It's a lot of spoiler alerts. It's a lot of exciting plays to come down at the end of the season. And now let's get into our game of the week. For the game of the week, we have, luckily for you, Oren, it's payback that the only game of the week we have this week is SAR at Ramaz, Saturday night, January 25th. I believe the game is going to be at 8:30. p.m. because SAR has a Shabbaton, junior Shabbaton, so the game's starting a little later. And it's going to be a rematch of the game we just saw, minus Ari Halpert, unless he's goes to Turkey and gets some shots in his wrist or something and has some healing powers. But the game is going to be, it's a big one, right? SAR, like we said, this game is pivotal. They already lost. If they were going to lose one game, they did it early because now they obviously want to buy, especially with Ari's injury. Give him more time to heal. What do you see as far as this game? How SAR is going to be able to play, and obviously we know they have talent minus Ari, and really still maintain an opportunity to win this game.
I think it really changes things now that he's not going to be able to play. I was really under the assumption that if Ari was able to get healthy in time, SAR would get their revenge on Ramaz and come out on top. I think it's just too tall a task now to regroup with so little time now between that last game and this game, preparing without Ari Halpert. I think actually SAR played the LaFell school and maybe last night, came out on top. So they got to adjust fairly quickly playing in a game without Ari. But I think Ramaz is just it's a taller task. It's too hard to overcome, in my opinion. I think Ramaz will continue to carry that momentum, and I expect Ramaz to win the game by a final score of 54-45.
Gotcha. Now, the biggest thing that I think gets overlooked with Ari Halpert is that he's the best defensive player on the court. I think everyone kind of forgets that just because of his athleticism, the steals he gets. We know the offense he has, but the ball is in his hands so often, and his defensive alertness and the way he gets out and steals and cheats on defense, and he's able to get back because of his athleticism. I think that's the thing that's going to hurt SAR the most. Offensively, you have a kid like Ellis, we talked about, Goldberg. You have other players who can step up and score. Maybe they're not going to score 20 points, but if they each score 4 or 5 more points a game, that potentially can give them the firepower. But I think it's the defense where it's going to hurt them the most. And also just now, I think it's on Sam Weiss, who we all know is a number one in every team. And I think him and Ari are both 1As on SAR. But now it's going to be like, Sam Weiss is going to be gunning to score, to create, and you really have to stop him. And that's what's going to be the key to the game. I'm not going to give a prediction like you did when your school was involved, but I think it's going to be a great game. And I think it's going to be a very close game. And again, one player goes down, another opportunity for someone else to step up. And I think that's what we're going to have an opportunity to see as SAR takes on Ramaz. And I think that's about it. We have a short week, so the show's a little shorter as we go through it. We're looking forward to coming into our home stretch of the season. We're going to have a lot of things going on. We're in talks about coming out with our team, the All-Americans of the year. We're going to have a first team, a second team, and potentially player of the year, the Yeshiva League. So a lot of good things coming down, and we look forward to see the season, to how it plays out and all those teams. So again, we want to thank our sponsors, Holy Schnitzel, Gotta Get a Bagel. This is Ari Wickes for Oren Glickman, Yeshiva League Pass Tip-Off Podcast, episode number 5 in the books. Yeah.